Hi everyone! Just here a couple of minutes early to test the video and the audio. Hi everyone! Oh, we still got a couple of minutes before the event goes live. I'm just here to test the video and the audio. If anybody's here yet, I am here to answer your questions live. I've got some questions that people have already submitted. Hello! Oh, okay, so Erin's here. Hi. I'll say hello as I see people pop in. Erin, can you... Okay, everything looks like the audio and the video is working. We're going to wait just a couple more minutes to get started. And meanwhile, Erin, if you have any questions, be sure and type them in. Hi, Sharon. Hi, Ellen. Hi, Vivian. And Ron is here. Ron, hi! You're just here to make trouble, aren't you? Hi, Carla. And Carla submitted a question earlier, so I'll get to it. Hi, Suzanne. See, Erin's going to go ahead and watch the end of Celebrity. What is WOF? I don't know what that is. Hi, Rosemary. I've got your question. I'm going to be answering it soon. Hi, Cherie. We just got, I'm going to wait a couple more minutes to see if someone else joins the discussion, and then I will get to your questions and we can talk about Elevator Girl. Hi, Pat. Pat, thanks so much for all your recaps during the serial. Oh, Erin's back. She's saying Celebrity WOF is Wheel of Fortune. Of course it is. Why didn't I know that? My parents are watching that right now, too. Hi, Shirley. Oh, Shirley, thanks for your recaps during the serial, too. And let's see. Donna's here. Hi, Donna. And Letitia, hi. Long time no talk, Letitia. Yeah. Okay, so it looks like it's time to get started. Welcome, everyone, and thanks so much for coming to the Elevator Girl Serial Fan Feedback Live event. And first, a big thank you for following along with Elevator Girl this year. I have to be honest with you, I was a little nervous for this one. I just didn't know how well it would be received. I've never written time travel before. I didn't tell you that it was time travel before the story started. And I really just didn't know what you would think about it. And to be honest, when the first novella was released and when the episode started spinning out every day, I didn't even look at the feedback because I was afraid it would be bad. And I thought, oh, if it's terrible, what am I going to do? Because I didn't really want to know, because I knew I would have the entire serial to write, and I almost didn't want the feedback in the beginning because I was afraid it would be bad. So thank you for proving me wrong. You're the best readers ever, and your response to the serial this year has just been fantastic, and I can't tell you how much it's meant to me that you followed along. And we had more people following along this year than ever before, and that's thanks to you too, because you keep telling other people about the serial, and you keep bringing more people to our group, and thank you for that. So I'm going to get right to the questions. There were, let's see, I've got about maybe 9 or 10 questions that were submitted ahead of time. And I'll be taking questions live too. So just type them in and I will try to get to them. I'm going to read just a couple of comments as people that are in the group are posting. And Ellen says she loves time travel. She's reading one right now. I love time travel too. I mean, everybody's probably familiar with Outlander and Diana Gabaldon's great book series and now TV series. I mean, what a great romance that's been. And, you know, that is, gosh, Diana probably wrote that 20 years ago, I'm guessing. And it's just now really coming into its own. So I think time travel kind of comes and goes as far as its popularity and it being you know, a trend in genre fiction in general, but romance in particular. I know Wheel of Time is being adapted and is playing right now on Prime. So time travel is definitely having another go around, and I really appreciate you letting me indulge another writing muscle and letting me include it in Elevator Girl. And let's see. Okay, I'm going to answer Erin's question that she just posted, and then I'm going to get to the ones that I have that were submitted before. Because Erin's asking about time travel. And she says, what's your process for finding timelines and figuring out how to make things fit within a month's span? So as far as the timeline for Elevator Girl, actually, when I first started thinking about Elevator Girl, I knew the basic premise would be that she would discover this other place in the basement of the hotel. Originally, I thought she would probably go back to the 1920s. And that was just in my head the whole time I was thinking about the series and sort of just incubating on it before I started writing it. But then once I started writing it, I realized that what I wanted it to be a time period where people who had lived in that time could still be alive. And then the more I thought about it, 50 years ago, 1970s, I mean, what a great time to go back to. Just so rich in pop culture. I love the 70s music. I love the 70s clothing styles, hairstyles. I just love everything about the 70s as far as pop culture references are concerned. And the more I thought about it, the more it just seemed like a really fun time period to go back to. So Ellen, I started with the 1920s and then moved on up. I actually considered the 60s for a while and then decided 70s just seemed really like the sweet spot. And so that was the time period that I settled on. As far as how I get things, when I'm planning the serial and I work things into a month time frame, I think that was the other part of your question. I plot out the serials a little ahead of time as far as I know what the plot points are going to be at the end of each month. So I know that at the end of month 1 there's going to be a big plot turn, and the end of month 2 there's going to be a big plot turn, and the end of month 3, and the end of month 4, and the end of month 5. And so I figure out what I want those plot turns to be ahead of time, but I don't have a lot of other details figured out. And I kind of write it as I go. I write it a month ahead of time, so I write the July episodes in June, and then I write the August episodes in July, and I really am writing it as I go. And what I'm doing is dropping into the serial, the Facebook group for the serial fans, and I'm reading your comments. Now, I didn't the first month because I was afraid they would be unfavorable, but once I realized that you did like the story and that you were on board with it, I started dropping in to basically eavesdrop on what your comments were, because I wanted to know what you thought about it and where you thought the story was going and where you wanted it to go. So I really do keep all of those things in mind as I'm plotting the story going forward. So in the truest sense of the word, you are involved in the serials because I consider what your comments are as I plot the story. All right, I'm just going to go through some more of these posts and say hello to Lisa. Hello, Connie. Hi, Les. And let's see. Make sure anyone else. I will I will scroll back through here to see if I've lost any or left out any questions. See, Lisa posted a question about another cereal, and I'll get to that in just a bit. But if I do miss your question, just post it again to make sure that I see it. Okay, so here's some of the questions that were submitted early on. And Letitia asked, how did you come up with the idea for Elevator Girl? And what elements do you try to add to a story to make it entertaining? Okay, so the idea for Elevator Girl. As most of you know, all the serials I've written so far have had something to do with, I've used the girl in the title. So there was Coma Girl, and then there was Temp Girl, and then Comeback Girl, and Factory Girl, Lottery Girl, and then this year was Elevator Girl. And when I start to think about a story, of course I want it to be about a young female, so that girl is in the title. And honestly, I just start thinking about what would be an interesting job, what might be an interesting setting, something that would expand as far as storylines go, and maybe even something that's an intriguing word. So girl by itself is a pretty common word, so it's nice to have a more interesting word to go along with it. And this year, I don't know, the word elevator just popped into my head. I've always had a thing about elevators, and I always felt like I was going to get trapped on one someday. Every time I got an elevator, it crossed my mind. I never got trapped on an elevator, but there was a time when I was on an elevator and the doors opened, and I was not quite to the floor that I was supposed to get to, and we all had to climb up out of the elevator. And that was pretty spooky. I took the stairs for a while after that. But anyway, back to elevator. I don't know, there's something about it. As soon as it popped into my head, it's been this, this unique word. I just stuck with it for a while to see if I could come up with a story around the word. And the more I thought about it, the more this idea of a girl working in a hotel just came to mind. And elevator girls are actually a thing in Japan, by the way. And they used to be a thing in this country back when elevators were manually operated. First they were male operators, but then department stores and buildings, commercial buildings, realized that it was a little bit more appealing to writers if it was an attractive young woman that was sort of operating the elevator. Even though she wasn't operating it anymore, she was just giving directions and just being courteous to the people riding the elevator. So anyway, that's how the idea came to me. The word came to me first, and then I sort of built the story around it. My brother works in the hotel industry. He's always been in the hospitality world, and he's told me so many great stories about hotels and guests, and it really takes a special person to work in the hospitality industry. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought setting in a hotel seemed like a rich place for stories. And there's so many great hotels here in Atlanta, which that's another thing that's important to me, is probably setting it in Atlanta so that I can have some crossover characters from some of my other stories. And where I live in Atlanta is in Midtown, and there are lots of historic hotels all around. So I had lots of good references just nearby. So it just seemed like the perfect setting for a story. And the second part of Letitia's question was, what elements do you try to add to a story to make it entertaining? Oh, that's a $64,000 question. Well, I know what you like now, and you seem to like love triangles, so that's always an interesting element to add. This time, and I like to try to make all the serials a little different, so its setting is slightly different. And this time, of course, I made time travel an element, and that in and of itself just gave the story a whole new spin. As soon as I came up with the idea that there was something going on in the basement, and at first I wasn't thinking time travel. First I was thinking there was just some mystery involved, something it may be something nefarious going on in the basement. And then it hit me that it could be a time travel element. And then once that idea slid into my mind, everything kind of opened up from there, which is kind of how writing goes. It just sort of expands upon itself, and there's not really any magic to it, but we just sort of, writers learn that if we just kind of plant the seeds in our imagination and just ruminate on it for a while, normally those stories will start to really bloom. And this one did, thank goodness. Okay, and thanks, Letitia, for that question, by the way. And the next question is from Erin, and she says, what happened to Franklin and the vintage shop? Did he hire Virginia like he offered? So Franklin was the guy who ran the Time and Again vintage shop, and he was also someone who hung out at the lounge. I needed someone who had been there at the time, but who was also alive and now and could tell her about it, and someone who wasn't really connected to the hotel. And Franklin just occurred to me as just this fun character who could tell Virginia what it had been like to hang out in the lounge, and he could have a more social outlook on like the characters there. And he might know some characters that people working at the hotel hadn't known, that Otis, for example, the owner of the hotel, might not have been familiar with. So I thought Franklin was a really fun character. And I actually planted him there as a possibility for somebody, at the end, we weren't really sure what was going to happen with the hotel. And I'm not going to give a lot of spoilers here, but as far as who actually bought the hotel at the end. But let's just say that I planted some of these characters in thinking that they would be good candidates for that person who may have bought the hotel. And Franklin did offer Virginia a job, and she might have taken it, except we know that she took over as manager of the hotel at the end. So she's probably not going to go work for Franklin, but I suspect she'll be back to buy more clothes. By the way, the area where the shop is set there really is an area like that in Atlanta. It's called Little Five Points, and it's just chock full of vintage clothing stores, really, really great clothing stores. So if you ever come to Atlanta, head to Little Five Points, and you'll find just a group of great old vintage stores that are right there together in Little Five. Okay, thanks for that question, Erin, by the way. And the next question is from Deanna, and she says, first off, again, I must say this is my favorite serial. Would like to know how you came up with the plot. I kind of went over some of that, but she asked a second part, have you considered writing a follow-up to your serials? Just a short, where are they now? By the way, Deanna's also a writer, so she's asking questions that from writer to writer. Okay, so consider writing follow-ups. Yes, I will probably be posting some follow-up scenes in the Facebook group for the serial fans as we go along, because I'd like to give you updates here and there on what's happening. Although, let me just say that I've been hopeful that the follow-up of the serials would be in the form of a TV series. I mean, I've made no secret of the fact that I really hope that some of these serials turn into TV shows. The first one, Coma Girl, was optioned and sold to a network, and a great pilot script was written. But the network decided not to pick up the show and didn't film a pilot. It was the CW network, and they were really big into superheroes at the time, and Coma Girl didn't quite make that cut. So unfortunately, that project has fallen out of option now, but we still have some interest, and I always hold out hope. My big plan is that if someone buys one of the serials, that hopefully they'll buy the entire franchise, and that we can get more than one of them into a TV series. So yes, I would like to do follow-ups to the serials. I'm hoping that those follow-ups will be in the form of a TV show. But if not, then yes, I'll be writing some follow-up, maybe not full stories, but maybe scenes here and there. And I'll be posting those in the Facebook group for the serial fans, because you guys are fantastic, and I want you to see it first. Okay, thanks, Deanna, by the way, for that question. And this question is from Marge, and she asked, what happened to Virginia's parents? Okay, so if you remember, Virginia's parents were always sort of absent, and they were in, let's see, where were they in the beginning? They had, I think they had set out, oh, this is terrible, I've already forgotten some of the story. They set out the pandemic in Montserrat, I think, and then they were in Venezuela, and then Aruba. And so Virginia's parents are sort of these nomadic people, and don't seem really concerned about Virginia, do they? You know, she was raised by her grandparents, and she loves her parents, but I think she's just kind of gotten used to them not being around. But if you remember at the end of the story, they did say that they were coming home now that her mother is feeling better. It seems as though that might have scared them a little, and that they will be home eventually to see Virginia, but probably not right away. So I'm hoping that on their, another month or two down the way, they'll come back to the States. The pandemic will be over, and they'll all have a reunion. Maybe they'll come back for Virginia's wedding. That would be a good time. Okay, thanks, Marge, for that question. And Rosemary asked a question. She said, the story left several things open to possibilities. Virginia marrying Archie, Virginia's parents, and what she'll do to bring the Coronado back to life. Is there a sequel to the story? Okay, so another question about a sequel. I'm not planning a sequel, but like I said, I will be writing bonus scenes occasionally and posting them in the Facebook group for the serial fans, because I get it. You want to know what's going on with the characters, and honestly, for me, it's fun to go back and talk about the characters. And because most of them have been set in Atlanta, it's actually an opportunity for me to do some crossover, so that I can maybe even have some of the girls cross paths, because it wouldn't be out of the question for, let's say, Lottery Girl to cross paths with Elevator Girl. So maybe I'll even do something like that. The good thing about the way the serials are written and the way the Facebook group is set up is I can do those little bonus scenes, and I don't have to build an entire story around it. And that's just a fantastic outlet for a writer, because we don't have to commit to an entire book. We can just get a nice scene out there when we want to. So I'll be doing more of that. Thanks, Rosemary, for the question. And Carla asked, hi, Stephanie, what was your inspiration for Elevator Girl? I've kind of gone over that a little bit, but I will go on to say that I think elevators are kind of interesting to most people in general. So in one of my newsletters, I asked readers to respond if they had feelings one way or the other about elevators. And a lot of people responded that they had either phobias about elevators, or they liked elevators, that was something they sought out. As a matter of fact, if those of you who were around for the Temp Girl serial, that was the second serial way back in 2017. Temp Girl had an autistic brother that was a favorite character of that story, and when he came to visit her in Atlanta, he was fixated on elevators, and that was one thing that he did, was he asked her to take him to ride elevators and some of the big skyscrapers that were around Midtown Atlanta. And if you remember, she took him into the Bank of America building, and some of the buildings here are so tall, well, some of the buildings everywhere are so tall that you have to have a series of 2 or 3 elevator banks to actually get to the top of the building. Anyway, I talked some about elevators in Temp Girl, and there are actually people who go around the world. They're elevator aficionados, I guess you would say. And there are groups of people who go around the world to ride every famous elevator. So it's really a thing. And Carla goes on to ask, how do you find so many girl ideas? Well, there are lots of girls in the world. I haven't run out yet. I hope I don't, because I want to keep up with this franchise. I keep thinking I'm going to run out of ideas, but then something always comes to me. And yes, I already have an idea for 2022. Not ready to talk about it yet, I don't think, but there will be another girl serial this year. I'm just going to stop for a minute and say hello to everybody who's popped in since the last time I looked. Let's see which way this goes. Okay. Hello, Desiree and Lisa and Nikki. And hi, Ken. So Ken and I used to work together back in the day in my other life as a computer programmer. I think they're called coders now, aren't they, Ken? Thanks for dropping in. And Corinne and Carla. Hey, Carla. Carla's my cousin. And Holly, whose son is in the military. And she says, yes, she does love triangles. I do too. I like writing them. And Belinda is here. And she says, after the Body Movers books, Elevator Girl is my next favorite story. Thank you. That's really sweet. Let's see. Aaron says, for my blog, I originally had him as RuPaul in my head. Is that, let's see, did I miss one of your other comments? Is that, oh, let's see, are you talking about Manny? Maybe? Okay. And let's see. Rosemary, she's talking about the Body Mover series. And everybody loves, Deborah says, I love Detective Terry. Yeah, don't we all? We all want a Jack in our life. It may be someone who's a little more faithful, but yeah, everybody loves Jack. And Pat says, like the Junkman's Daughter. That's a cool place in Little Five. Yeah, Junkman's Daughter. Junkman's Daughter is a great little place to shop. And it's just around the corner from all the vintage clothing stores I was mentioning earlier. And let's see. Hello, Lori. And let's see, I just want to make sure I say hello to everybody. Connie's here. And hello, Dominique. And Don. And let's see. All right, I'm going to keep going, guys, and some more questions. And if I forget to go back to crossover characters, remind me. Will somebody post that again? Okay. So on to some more questions. Or this is actually, I'm continuing with Carla's questions. She says, is there a favorite girl that you've created? Gosh, let's see. I guess Coma Girl is probably always going to be a soft spot for me because she kind of got the ball rolling for me. Also because that was a really personal story. That story, not Coma Girl exactly, but the fact, the kernel for the idea of Coma Girl was told to me by my third and fourth grade teacher, Miss Ross. She told me once, I was 10, that she had been in a coma after a terrible car accident for, I don't know, maybe a couple of months she'd been in a coma. And she said she remembered everything that had happened to her during that time. And that had always stuck with me. And then later, when I wrote the Coma Girl serial in 2016, I don't know, I just, there's some stories writers will tell you that some write themselves. And it certainly was a little bit of effort to get Coma Girl down on paper the way it was in my head. But that story really did come easily because I guess I was so in love with the story, and because it was such a personal, it had such a personal aspect to it. So I'd say Coma Girl's probably always going to be my favorite. As far as Temp Girl, I don't have anything in common with Temp Girl, but I really loved her moxie. Well, that's not true. She was from a small town, and so was I. And so I drew from that for Temp Girl. Temp Girl, she was a spoiled brat, though, and I often refer to that story as my make under story. Instead of being made over, she was making herself, the story was a make under experience for that character. We took her from, we first met her, she was a spoiled brat, and then she finally got back to herself again by the end of the story. And then Comeback Girl, again, a small town story, so I love small towns. And then Factory Girl, of course, that's the epitome of a small town girl. A lot of elements from Factory Girl were taken from my upbringing and the town that I grew up in eastern Kentucky called Olive Hill. And it wasn't exactly that. I didn't base everything on my hometown, but a lot of memories and stories about Olive Hill sort of lent themselves to that story. And then Lottery Girl, yeah, I've never won the lottery. I played the lottery sometimes, especially when I was writing that story. But that story just always, I know, something about winning the lottery always seemed like if you talk to enough people, the idea of what will you do if you win the lottery, that always comes up at some point or another, doesn't it? So I just felt like that was a story that was rich with ideas. And now Elevator Girl. The next one, my next serial for in 2022 is completely different, and it's going to be set in Atlanta too, so there are going to be some crossover characters, and I'm already excited and thinking about it. So I'm, yeah, we'll keep the girl train rolling for as long as we can. As long as you keep reading, I'm going to keep writing. And let's see. She says, Carla goes on to say, lastly, just an observation. I love how you created the complexity of time travel and the two separate planes that exist simultaneously. So very complicated and incredibly intriguing. Your writing is, and I'm not going to say what she said. It was a very nice thing, very complimentary. Thank you for all that you do. That was really sweet, Carla. And are you sure this isn't my mom posting? Thank you for that. Okay, let me see if anything else has been posted while I've been rambling on. Let's see. Be sure and post questions here in the comment section. Oh, right. Let's see. I'm a little bit behind. Dawn says the professor. Yes, the autistic brother in Temp Girl who was fixated on elevators, she referred to him as the professor. That was a good catch there. I don't think I would have remembered that. Holly says, what about something set in a museum of some sort? That's really a good idea. I actually had an idea for a short story that was set. It had something to do with Vikings and a woman who was in a museum. That was a bit of a fantasy time travel. I'm not sure that idea is going to make it out there, but I will tuck that away in my ideas folder someday. And let's see. Oh, hi, Pam. I'm just looking at more people have dropped in. Pam's from Olive Hill. We went to grade school together. Just a great lady. Hi, Lori. Okay, Lori asked, I might have missed it, but is the Coronado based on a real building? Sort of. Originally, I was thinking about, like I said earlier, having the time travel go back to the 1920s. But then once I decided 1970s would be a better time period, I actually based a lot of the hotel on a great historic hotel here in Midtown called the Georgian Hotel. A beautiful hotel. Except it's not like the story. The hotel in my story is a little more plain. The Georgian's very ornate and just a beautiful hotel, and I couldn't get away with making it look 70s. So I based a lot of what I know about that hotel. I put a lot of that in the story, but the decor alone meant that I couldn't actually make that the hotel. So most of the hotel elements I made up. Let's see. Joni says Factory Girl is her favorite, and of all the serials. And Joni's from around my area too. So thank you for that, Joni. And that was a lot of things about our surroundings in that story weren't there. And Ellen says, winning the lottery, no thanks. Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of with you there. People would come out of the woodwork, wouldn't they? I don't know. I think it's history shows that most lottery winners end up worse off. And that kind of was happening to my girl too, wasn't it? Let's see. Shirley says, if you keep writing stories that take place in Atlanta, we have a better chance of seeing Jack. Yes, and honestly, I want to go back and see Jack too. I love bringing him into these stories. So the next serial will also be set in Atlanta, and you'll be seeing more of Jack, I promise. And Don says, is there a name yet for the new serial? There is. I'm not sure if I'm ready to release it yet because the name is a little misleading. And I don't want to give you all the wrong impression before I give you the introduction to the story. So stay tuned. And, Carla posted, positive, not your mom. Yeah, mom's not on Facebook, Carla. But anyway, your comments are really sweet. Thank you for that. And Erin says, she grew up on a farm. A few years later, after she moved in, a lottery winner bought the farm. And the people made a huge mess of things. That sounds about right. Barb says she loves seeing Carlotta in Factory Girl. Would love to see her again. You know what? Let me see. Actually, in the serial in 2022, just thinking ahead in my mind, not that I have the story plotted, but just thinking about that character, the main character, there's probably going to be a lot more opportunity to see Carlotta. So I probably will bring her back into this next serial. And you know what? I'm going to make a note of that while I'm thinking about it, just to remind myself while I'm plotting. Okay, thank you for that, Barb. And Karen's with us. Let's see. Enjoying the live chat. You're so down to earth. Yeah, I can't be anything but. You know, I came from a tiny, tiny town, and I love the way that I was raised, and I love the people there, and I hope I'm always grounded. And Jennifer is here. Hello. And let's see. Deborah stopped by. And she said, you hit the vibe and feeling of the 70s perfect. I felt like I was back there. And thank you for that. And Shirley says, have the fan comments ever changed the direction or character element of your story? Yes, they have. And I'm bad about not commenting in the fan book serial group as much as I should. But some of that is because I don't want you to feel like I want you to feel like you can comment and that I'm, without being worried about me, I don't know, my presence there. Like, I wouldn't want anybody to hold back because they would think that I would have my feelings hurt or anything like that. So I lurk a lot in the group and I don't post as much. But yes, I read things, and when I know what the readers have questions about, or if something's confusing, I like knowing that so that I can fix it. I can address it, if I get the chance. And the other part of that, especially where a love triangle is concerned, I'm always worried, and let's say worried, but I'm interested in what the readers think about the potential of the two guys in the character's world, and which one they think would be more appropriate, all of those things. I'm also looking for hints about the sensuality level in the stories. I'm trying to keep, I know that these episodes are posted on my website, and so I try to keep them at least PG-13 and not too sensual. And I appreciate it when the fans let me know, whether they like the love scenes or they like the door being closed or, those kinds of things. So comments on the sensuality level of the story, I look for those, and things like language, things like that. And then if I see a comment in the serial group or even on my main page that feels organic to me, it's like, yeah, I really do need to include that in the story. For example, this was a answer from one of my newsletter questions. When I asked my newsletter readers about their stories with elevators, one of them responded that she had been trapped in an elevator. And even though I'd always been worried that I might be, it hadn't occurred to me to put that in the Elevator Girl story until I received that comment back from the reader. And I thought, well, of course, if I'm going to have Elevator Girl riding in an elevator all the time and using it as a time travel portal, how scary and interesting would that be if she's actually trapped in the time portal? So I don't know that it seems obvious now, even that I'm talking about it. It's like, why wouldn't I have thought of that? But honestly, it hadn't crossed my mind until I got that comment from the reader. So absolutely, reader comments can change the direction of the story, especially with the serials, because again, I'm writing them as I go along. So I do appreciate all the comments. Erin says, Coop needs to fall in love with a girl. I'm writing that down, Erin. Not a bad idea. Ellen loves Jack. Thanks for that. Hi, Julie. Julie stopped in. Are you planning podcasts for your other serials? Thank you for asking. Most of you might know that I turned Coma Girl into a podcast earlier this year, and that launched in February, and I think the last episode was up sometime in mid-August. And yes, I turned a second serial, Temp Girl, into a podcast. It launched January 2nd, and it's still going every day. So today is the 9th, and so the episode 9 came out today of Temp Girl. So the Temp Girl podcast is available wherever you listen to podcasts. And since the Coma Girl podcast was launched, now Facebook is actually hosting podcasts as well. So if you like listening to podcasts, if you want to try it, even if you've never listened to podcasts, you might keep the Facebook player in mind. If you have a phone, it's not on the desktop version yet, but if you access Facebook through your phone, you can listen to podcasts through Facebook now. Thank you for the question, Julie. And let's see. Connie says, what book did Charlotte appear in? I have no idea. Charlotte. Let me think about that. If somebody else knows which book that you're talking about. Connie, can you give me some more details? Honestly, I'm so bad about not remembering things from my own books. It's embarrassing. Anyway, if somebody can help me out, was there a Charlotte in one of my books? Let's see. Hannah and Chance's daughter could be a girl. That's a really good comment. Thanks for that, Erin. Yeah, what a character she would be. Yeah, the mix of Chance and Hannah's daughter. Oh gosh. She could be almost anything. Something amazing or maybe not. Did you mean, Connie, were you talking about Carlotta? Oh, because we've been talking about Carlotta. Oh, yeah. Okay, not Charlotte, but Carlotta. She is in the Body Mover series. Right. Okay. And let's see. Just want to make sure I haven't missed any more questions here. I'm going to get back to the questions that people posted earlier. before the event started. And Joni says, this is my second favorite serial so far. I love the fact that you include characters from the Body Mover series. That's my all-time favorite series. It's nice to know they're still around. My question is, why didn't you actually use Coop's name in this one rather than just refer to him as the medical examiner? I know it wasn't a big deal, but I just hope that with each serial you do, those characters will continue to be included. I probably will be keeping and dropping in the Body Movers characters in all the serials that I set in Atlanta. I definitely intend to do that. But it's a really good question, Johnny, because you noticed something that I did very purposefully. There was a scene in Elevator Girl. It was during the exhumation scene, the exhumation of the body of the girl who had been murdered 50 years ago. And of course, we'd already met Jack at that point because Elevator Girl talked to him about the cold case murder that she was instrumental in having reopened. So she already knew Jack. So she gets to the graveside, and there are several people there, and she notices Jack, and she notices he's talking to someone with a medical examiner jacket, and she kind of overhears this conversation between them. Now, for those of you who have read the 12th Body Movers book, know that there was quite an altercation between Jack and Coop in that book. And so this is kind of the follow-up to that scene. The reason that I didn't mention Coop by name is because Elevator Girl, Virginia, she had no idea who Coop was, so she wouldn't have known his name. She only knew him by the fact that he had the medical examiner jacket on. So that's sort of a point of view question. She couldn't have known his name, so unless they were introduced, that seemed like a conversation that didn't need to happen. That would have been a little gratuitous and extraneous to the story. So I just assumed that the people reading it knew that Jack was talking to Coop, especially since they talked about Carlotta. So a good question, though. It was a good observation, and I did it purposefully for a point of view. Let's see. Next question is from Suzanne. And she says she loves the daily serials. Please keep them coming. I will. And she says, do you have a favorite girl? So it was a question someone asked earlier, and I said that Coma Girl is probably always going to be my favorite because that story was personal for me, but also because it just kind of got everything started. Back before I started writing the serials, I don't know, I felt like I was in a little bit of a rut. I loved writing the Body Movers books, and I've been revamping some older books as I get them back from my former publisher. But I just was feeling a little like there was sort of a rinse and repeat routine to my writing career, and I just wanted to experiment with something new. And serials, I just felt like it was something I was always interested in, but I felt like there wasn't every time I'd written one for a publisher, they hadn't done a really good job of getting the word out about them. They didn't make it easy to follow along. There were just lots of things that they did, I felt like, incorrectly that kept the serials from being as popular as they could have been. So it took me a long time to come up with how to roll out a daily serial, how I could do it on my website, and then how I could offer it for sale to people who didn't want to drop by the website every day. And then how I could offer formats, different formats. So the novellas are all in ebook, and at the end of the serials I would put them in print and audiobook. It took me a while to kind of clunk through that business model and how I would make it happen. So I think just because Coma Girl helped me launch the franchise and just sort of set all of that in motion for me, I think that's probably another reason why she'll always be my favorite. And so yeah, Coma Girl is my favorite, and to date she's still the best. It's still the best-selling serial. I think most people who jump into the serials will just automatically go back to the first one and start there, and that's probably why. Okay. Next question is from Sharon, and she says, "Will you have another book out about the Coronado and Virginia?" Thanks for that question, Sharon. I don't know. I probably won't have another book out about the Coronado and the Elevator Girl in Virginia, but I probably will post some scenes, some bonus scenes into the Facebook serial group, and maybe some updates as we go along. By the way, my film manager is probably not listening to this, so I can say this, but he seems kind of excited about Elevator Girl, so maybe we can get this one optioned and we can get something done with this one too. We'll see. Fingers crossed. If anyone out there knows a great somebody at one of the movie studios or networks, if you put in a good word for me, I sure would appreciate it. Anyway, thanks for that question, Sharon. And I've gone through all the questions that were submitted ahead of time, so I'm going to go back to the list and make sure I haven't overlooked anything. But be sure and post your question. Aaron says, "What decade do you think Otis dies in?" So, interesting. So, Otis actually goes. I'm not going to put a lot of spoilers here. Oh, it's hard. It's hard, isn't it, to talk about without having spoilers. So, I'd say that Otis probably lived, at least into the 90s, don't you think? Yeah, let's say he lived into the 90s. And let's see, Janice. Janice popped in and she says, "I love listening to the podcast." Thank you for that. I've really enjoyed bringing the stories to life in podcast. I love the audiobooks. The narrators do such a good job, but then there's just something about adding the sound effects and the music. And the thing that I've done differently with Temp Girl is I was able to add a lot more music to this particular podcast. So it's a different listening experience. Even if you've heard the stories before, the podcast really does just make it seem different. It's different to me. I'm listening to the episodes as the sound engineers are releasing them to me, and I can listen to them, like someone who doesn't know the story, because it is just such a different experience to me. By the way, if you like listening to podcasts, it is always nicer, especially for fiction podcasts, because they have sound effects and music. If you can listen with earbuds, it's just much more immersive, or headphones or something, that makes it just a richer listening experience. And let's see. Joni says, "I was just looking back and photos from years ago when we were at Lyndon Larry's. I never got a picture with you, but that was the day that started my obsession with your work." Thanks, Joni. Yeah, Joni and I have kin in common, and so we've gotten to see each other in person a couple of times. So thank you for that. Karen says she really misses the Body Movers. Sometimes I do too. I really love those characters, and I adore Jack, of course, because if I didn't, I wouldn't be bringing him back into serials all the time. But I do really like being able to bring back those characters in the serials. It's like it lets me revisit them. So as much as you like seeing them in the serials, know that I like that too. I do it for myself. And for you, but for myself. Let's see. Lori says, "Are the podcasts the stories read out loud, or are they discussions about the books?" That's a good question, Lori. They're actually the stories in audiobook form that have been enriched with sound effects and music. So the audiobooks, you can purchase the audiobook of the complete serial in its entirety, and it's narrated. I loved all of my narrators for all my serials. But then the podcasts actually take it a step further, and they break them down by daily episodes. So you listen to one that day's episode, and you can catch up. You can, like right now, there are 9 episodes out on Temp Girl, and you can listen to all of them at once, and then there'll be a new one released every day. And it's the audiobook narrator, but it's also been enriched with the sound effects and the music, and then there are voice outros in there from me at the end, and then the show notes have questions about the stories that invite discussion between people that are listening to the podcast. It invites people listening to the podcast to come and join the Facebook group for the serials, so that there are more people coming into the group to talk about the stories. And let's see, Becky asked, was Carlotta in Party Crashers? Yes, Party Crashers was sort of the prequel to Body Movers. Party Crashers is a romantic mystery that stands on its own. I had been thinking about the idea for Body Movers for a while, so I knew I wanted a man and a woman that were moving bodies, or I knew I wanted a young woman who probably worked in the fashion industry by day and then moved bodies by night. But I couldn't figure out why a woman would do that. Like, she would need a really good reason to do that. And at first I thought, well, maybe her boyfriend gets her involved, and then I didn't like that idea. It's like, that sounds a little icky. But then when I wrote Carlotta, she was already a secondary character in Party Crashers, and there was a scene where she does something that, I don't know, it's a little unseemly, and it sounds criminal. And once a person in the story asked her why she did it to protect her younger brother, who is in debt to loan sharks. And then as soon as I wrote that sentence, it hit me. That's my duo for the Body Mover series, because a young woman working in the fashion industry, working for Neiman Marcus by day, she wouldn't move bodies for just anybody at night, but she would for a younger brother that she was trying to help out. So as soon as I wrote that, I knew I had my duo for Body Movers, and I spun that series off. So Party Crashers stands alone, but yes, it is sort of a prequel to Body Movers, because that's when we meet Carlotta, sort of before she was scared straight. That was when she was still doing things, party crashing and doing things she shouldn't have been doing. And we meet Hannah in Party Crashers as well. So thank you for that question. And then everyone else is saying, yes, Becky, yes, Becky. Thank you. Is tonight's live session recorded? Two of my friends couldn't listen and would love this. I think it's being recorded. I haven't hit the end live video button yet, and I think until I do, all of this is recorded. And so yes, it'll be posted on my page, and probably in the group as well, but definitely on my main page it'll be available. And let's see. Corinne says, love Body Movers, thank you. And Jennifer says, are you still planning on writing another book for your Voodoo series? Yes, I am. And actually, I am so close to getting that book finished, but things just keep happening, life keeps happening, and for some reason, I'm so sorry that book keeps getting pushed off my schedule. But yes, it is underway, and I'm working on it. It's just taking a lot more work than I thought it would, and I really want it to be good. And I'm working on book 3 and 4 almost simultaneously, so just know that once I get those books done, they will be coming out pretty close together. So thank you for hanging in there and being patient while I figure out a way to finish that series. Yes, Karen, thank you for that. She says her daughter is would like to listen into this recording, and she's not able to be here. So yes, it'll be recorded and posted. And let's see. Oh, Shirley is saying she thought at one point he might have a crush on Matthew, and I was actually toyed with the idea of him having a crush on Thomas, Virginia's grandfather. So yeah, great minds. There actually, in the serials, there are always things that I think about that I would love to have done that I just didn't have room to do. For example, I considered later, I thought it might have been added a lot to the story. And if this ever makes it to TV, I will ask the TV writer to think about this. Is that if Virginia's grandfather was still alive, and maybe in an old folks home somewhere in a memory care facility or something like that, I think that would have added a lot to the story. But I honestly just didn't have room to fit it in, because she would have had to gone off site a lot, and I just didn't see a way that it would be easy. Plus, when it comes down to Virginia's decision about is she going to go or is she going to stay and which time period she's going to live in, I didn't want it to be made based on connections to people in one time period or another that she felt guilty about leaving. So that element of the story kind of answered itself. And Mary says, enjoyed the daily serial, loved the 70s nostalgia. The bar was a great connection. Thank you. Thanks for that comment. It's always nice to have a bar or some kind of, in every story it helps if there's some sort of a public place for my characters to be, so they can run into other characters. That was helpful in Lottery Girl. And let's see. That was, I guess I didn't have a bar in Factory Girl, but there were enough public places for people to run into each other. So for the questions earlier about different elements of the story to make them more entertaining, that's another thing I try to build into the story, are some sort of public places for people to run into each other. And Lottery Girl, there was the bar, there was also a park. That just makes it easier for those characters to sort of organically cross each other's paths. And Lori says, thanks, she'll check out the podcast. I appreciate that. Yeah, I need all the listens I can get on those podcasts. I keep hoping that someone from Hollywood is going to stumble across those podcasts, and maybe Coma Girl will be resurrected because of it. And let's see. Holly says she hasn't listened to the podcast yet, but definitely need to start. Oh, you're going to love the podcast if you've never listened to them. If you like audiobooks, you'll like podcasts. And Sani says, you haven't changed a bit. I think I probably have a little bit, Sani. But thank you for that. Rosemary says she's going to start Temp Girl tomorrow. Thank you for all of those really nice comments. And for all the different formats. Janet says she is enjoying different formats. She likes the serial format, and she's enjoying some of the other different ways to read the books. So thank you for that. I do that too. I read ebooks and paperback and listen to audiobooks, and I listen to podcasts, and I just love a story any way I can get it. And I love that there are different ways to consume stories these days, that you can get a story anywhere you are and any way you want. And I love that. So thanks for all the great comments. And Moody's from the Body Movers books. Yes, I love, Jennifer says she loved Moody's from the Body Movers books. That's June's bar, Moody's, the cigar bar. And I love that bar too. And you know what? I'm going to write that down, because maybe Moody's will make a return in the 2022 serial. Thanks for that reminder. And Factory Girl had the diner. You're right, Dominique. I'm so glad for that reminder. You're right. That's where people ran into each other, was at the diner. And there was a laundromat there. And Lois says she loved Factory Girl. Thank you for that. And gosh, it's already an hour has just flown by. I just can't believe that we've already come to the end of another event. Thank you so much for all of the comments and the questions, and you guys, you're just the best readers anyone could ask for, and I'm just so glad that you like my stories and that you spend your time with me and all my characters. You all could be doing so much with your time. I know you have so many entertainment choices, and please know that I so appreciate that you're spending some of your hours with me and my stories and my characters, and I'm just so grateful. And I guess I will be saying goodbye in a little bit. Just wanted to wish you all Happy New Year, and also to mention that I'm going to take some of the comments that I've heard tonight. I'm going to go back over the Elevator Girl serial and read it really closely again before I put it into paperback and to audiobook. And I probably won't make a lot of changes, but I may make a few tweaks. So sometimes there will be differences between the ebooks and the print versions and the audiobooks of the serials. The print and the audio will be the same, but I do make a few changes to the print and the audio, just shoring up a few details, clarifying things if people have made comments about things that were maybe confusing. Anyway, just know that I'm listening, and I'm going to incorporate as many of your comments as I can. Thank you again, and I just want to say be well and be safe, and I'll see you again. We'll get back together July 1st in 2022 for another girl serial. Thanks, everyone. Bye. Good night.